Clara Morgan lived in a small town called Willow Creek. The town was quiet, with tall oak trees lining the streets and children playing in the yards during summer. Clara's small house sat at the corner of Maple Street. It was old but tidy, with a garden full of bright flowers she loved to care for. Every morning, she would water her roses, her hands gentle on the petals, her mind filled with memories of days gone by. Clara was 72 years old. Her hair was silver now, and her skin had deep lines that told stories of laughter, sorrow, and resilience. She walked slowly with a cane, but her eyes were sharp, always noticing the little things that others might miss. She knew almost everyone in Willow Creek. People greeted her warmly when she went to the market, and she always had a smile for the children who ran past her house. Despite the town's charm, Clara often felt a quiet sadness. Her husband had passed away 10 years ago, and though her son, Marcus, called every day, she missed the warmth of family under one roof. Clara's days were simple, tending her garden, reading books, and baking for her neighbors. Sometimes, she would sit on her porch in the evening and watch the sun dip behind the hills, feeling both peace and a subtle loneliness. One morning, as Clara was trimming her rose bushes, she noticed something unusual. A piece of paper had been stuck to her gate. It fluttered in the breeze, and she carefully pulled it down. On it were words written in red ink, "You don't belong here." Clara's heart sank. She had lived in Willow Creek for over 40 years. Why would someone say this now? She shook her head, trying not to feel fear. "It's probably just some kids playing a mean joke," she whispered to herself. But deep inside, she felt a chill. She went inside, closed the door, and sat at her kitchen table, staring at the paper. Her hands trembled slightly. Later that day, Clara went to the market. She greeted Mr. Johnson, the grocer, and Mrs. Patel, who ran the bakery. Everyone seemed busy with their own lives, but she noticed some people glancing at her strangely. Whispers followed her down the aisles. Clara felt eyes on her, even when she turned around. By the time she returned home, she felt uneasy. The paper on her gate was gone, but the feeling of being watched did not leave her. She checked her locks, closed all the windows, and sat down with a cup of tea. Her mind wandered to Marcus. He lived in another city, far away. She hadn't wanted to bother him with small-town problems, but she wished he were there. That night, Clara sat on her porch under the soft glow of the street lamp. The town was silent except for the distant barking of a dog. She sipped her tea and tried to calm herself. Memories of her youth in Willow Creek came back, days when the town felt safe, and neighbors helped each other without fear. She wondered how things had changed. As she went to bed, Clara felt a mixture of sadness and anxiety. Something in the air felt different. She didn't know who had left the note or why, but she knew it was a warning. Clara hugged her pillow tightly, whispering, "I will be okay. I have to be strong." The next morning, Clara's routine continued, but her mind was alert. She watched her surroundings more carefully and noticed small things she hadn't before: footprints in her garden that weren't hers, tire marks on the street, and doors in the neighborhood that seemed to open and close more often than usual. She felt watched, yet she refused to let fear control her life. Clara's strength came from her life experiences. She had faced hardship before and had always found a way to endure. But she also knew she couldn't face every challenge alone. She longed for her son, Marcus, whose gentle voice could calm her worries and whose presence could make her feel safe again. Little did Clara know, Marcus had already sensed her unease from miles away. Though he could not reveal himself immediately, he was already planning to come home. He had been trained to protect and to act in dangerous situations, but he was also her son, and nothing mattered more to him than her safety. Clara closed her eyes that night, holding on to hope. She didn't yet know the danger that was quietly approaching, nor did she know that her son's arrival would change everything. For now, she clung to her routines, her memories, and the small joys of life, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. Clara woke early the next morning. She moved slowly, her cane tapping softly against the wooden floor. Last night's unease still lingered in her chest. She brewed her coffee and looked out the kitchen window at her garden. The roses she loved so much seemed less bright this morning, almost as if they shared her worry. As she stepped outside to check on the plants, Clara noticed fresh footprints in the soil. They were small, but not hers. Her heart raced. Someone had been in her garden again. She froze, trying to make sense of it. Who would do this, she whispered to herself. Fear gripped her, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. Clara reminded herself she had faced hard times before. She had survived grief, loneliness, and illness. Surely, she could handle this too. After tending her flowers, Clara went into town. The street seemed normal at first, but then she noticed a few familiar faces staring a little too long. A couple of young men walked past her slowly, muttering something under their breath. She didn't catch the words, but the tone made her uneasy. At the market, she found herself checking over her shoulder constantly. Even the grocer, Mr. Johnson, seemed distracted, avoiding eye contact when she greeted him. Back home, Clara found another note tucked under her mailbox. She picked it up with trembling hands. Written in bold letters were the words, "Leave now, or things will get worse." She felt a wave of sadness and anger. How could anyone threaten her for living in the town she had called home for decades? Clara knew she could not stay silent. She called a neighbor, Mrs. Patel, who lived across the street. Mrs. Patel had always been kind and supportive. When Clara told her about the notes and the footprints, Mrs. Patel's face grew serious. "Clara, you need to be careful. I've seen people in this town acting strangely lately. You are not alone, but don't underestimate them." Clara thanked her neighbor and hung up the phone. She felt a little better knowing someone else knew about the threats, but she also felt more anxious. How had things changed so quickly in her quiet town? She wondered if the people who once smiled at her now feared or disliked her without reason. That evening, as Clara sat on her porch, she noticed movement across the street. Shadows flitted between the trees. Her heart beat faster. She gripped her cane tightly and tried to stay calm. "It's probably nothing," she muttered, but deep down, she didn't believe it. Someone was watching her. She could feel it. Later that night, Clara heard a soft knock on her door. She froze, unsure whether to answer. When she finally did, no one was there. Only a small bundle of papers lay on the doorstep. She picked them up carefully and unfolded them. Inside were photographs of her house, her garden, even pictures of her sitting on the porch. Clara's hands shook. These people had been watching her for days. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She knew she needed help. She wanted to call someone she trusted. She thought of her son, Marcus. He had always been her protector, even from a distance. She picked up the phone, hesitated, then dialed his number. "Mom." Marcus's voice came through the line. It was calm, steady, and warm, the sound of safety in her world of fear. Clara's hands tightened around the phone. "Marcus, something is happening here," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't feel safe anymore." Marcus listened carefully. "I'm coming home, Mom. I want you to stay calm and don't confront anyone. Just lock your doors and stay inside. I'll handle this." Clara felt a mixture of relief and worry. Relief that Marcus was coming, but worry about what he would face. She trusted him completely, but the threats had already shaken her deeply. The next morning, Clara noticed more signs of the intruders. Her mailbox was bent, her garden gate scratched, and her flowers crushed. She felt anger rising inside her, mixed with fear. She had lived in Willow Creek her whole life and never imagined something like this could happen. That evening, she sat on her porch once more. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but Clara could not enjoy it. She hugged her knees to her chest and whispered, "I just want to be safe in my own home." Little did Clara know, Marcus was already on his way. He had been following a trail of suspicious activity linked to the town for some time. He knew that the safety of his mother was now at risk, and he would do everything he could to protect her. Clara did not know how close he was, but soon, she would feel the reassurance of having her son by her side. For now, Clara remained on the porch, watching the shadows grow longer, her heart heavy but her spirit determined. She had faced life's hardships before, and she would face this one too, but soon, help would arrive, and she would not have to face the fear alone. The days after the threatening notes felt heavier for Clara. She moved through her home cautiously, double-checking locks and peeking through the curtains whenever she heard a sound outside. Every creak in the old wooden floors or rustle of leaves set her heart racing. Her peaceful life in Willow Creek had turned into one of worry and sleepless nights. One morning, Clara stepped out to water her garden and froze. Her favorite rose bush had been trampled. Petals and leaves lay scattered across the ground. She sank to her knees, gently touching the broken stems. "Why are they doing this?" she whispered to the empty yard. The sadness in her voice was thick, but beneath it, a quiet strength remained. She had faced loss before, and though this was different, she refused to be broken. That afternoon, a group of men loitered near the edge of her street. Clara saw them from her window, their attention clearly on her house. Fear tried to grip her, but she steadied herself. She knew she could not run, this was her home, the place she had built over decades. She simply pulled her cardigan tighter around her and continued with her chores, though every movement was careful, deliberate. Her phone rang just as she finished dusting the living room. It was Marcus. "Mom, I'm in town," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "I need you to stay inside until I arrive. Don't go outside for anything." Clara felt a rush of relief. Marcus always knew what to say to make her feel safe. "I will wait," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. After hanging up, she closed all the curtains and checked the doors again. She knew the threats were real, but she also knew she would soon see her son. By the next morning, things had escalated further. Clara found her mailbox smashed, her garden gate splintered, and more notes left on her porch. The messages were clearer this time: "Leave now, or you will regret it." The words were meant to scare, and they did, but Clara's resolve grew stronger. She would not be intimidated. Clara called her neighbor, Mrs. Patel, once more. "They've destroyed more of my things," Clara said, her voice shaking slightly. "I don't know what to do." Mrs. Patel's eyes were full of concern. "You're strong, Clara, but maybe it's time someone you trust comes here. You shouldn't face this alone." Clara nodded. She knew her son would be here soon, but waiting felt like the hardest part. Later that evening, Clara sat on her porch, watching the shadows stretch across the street. She could feel eyes on her again. Her heart pounded, but she refused to let panic take over. She thought about all the times she had faced hardships in her life: the loss of her husband, the challenges of raising Marcus, and the years of quiet endurance. She could face this too, but she longed for Marcus's presence. Just as she was about to go inside, she noticed a car parked at the end of the street. Its engine was off, and the driver sat silently, watching. Clara's hands tightened around her cane. She took a deep breath and went inside, locking the door behind her. The fear was real now, sharper than ever, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She was not helpless. Inside, Clara paced, trying to think clearly. Her phone rang again. It was Marcus. "I'm 2 blocks away," he said. Stay calm. I'll be there in 10 minutes. Clara felt her chest relax slightly. 10 minutes could not come soon enough. Finally, the sound of footsteps on the porch made her heart leap. Marcus was there. He looked around carefully, his eyes scanning the street and nearby houses. Seeing him standing there, Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She rushed forward, her arms trembling, and hugged him tightly. "Mom, it's okay," Marcus whispered. "I'm here now. You're safe." Clara held onto him, tears running down her cheeks. "I was so scared," she admitted. "I didn't know what to do." Marcus guided her to a chair inside the living room. He checked the locks and peered through the windows. "You did well waiting for me. That was very smart." Clara nodded, feeling a mix of relief and pride. Her son's presence made all the difference. She realized that she had survived the worst of the days alone, but now she was not alone anymore. As night fell, Clara sat near Marcus, sipping tea. They talked quietly about the incidents, sharing memories and feelings. She explained how she had seen shadows and heard strange noises, and Marcus listened attentively. He didn't show his frustration, instead, he reassured her that everything would be handled carefully. Clara's home, though still fragile under the threat, felt safer with Marcus nearby. She could finally breathe, knowing that someone she trusted completely was there to protect her. The world outside might be unkind, but inside her house, love and courage filled every corner. And somewhere in the shadows beyond her yard, the watchers were still present, unaware that the woman they thought they could intimidate was no longer alone and that help had already arrived. Marcus spent the night at his mother's house, keeping watch while she slept peacefully in her room. He knew the danger had not disappeared. The threats were real, and the people behind them had been bold enough to destroy her property. But Marcus was trained for situations like this. He had worked cases before, tracking people who thought they could intimidate others. This was personal. Clara was his mother, and he would do everything to protect her. The next morning, Clara awoke to the smell of fresh coffee. Marcus had prepared breakfast quietly, setting a plate of toast and fruit on the table. "Good morning, Mom," he said softly. "Sleep well?" Clara smiled, grateful for his presence. "Better than I have in days," she admitted. She noticed how alert he seemed, scanning the street and the garden even while carrying breakfast. There was a calm strength in Marcus that reassured her. She knew he could handle the situation, but she also saw the worry in his eyes. After breakfast, Marcus suggested a plan. "Mom, I need to check the area around the house today." "I'll be careful. Just stay inside. Don't open the door for anyone except me." Clara nodded, trusting him completely. She watched as he stepped outside, moving with careful, deliberate steps. He surveyed the yard, noting the crushed flowers, the bent gate, and the disturbed soil. Every detail mattered. Marcus walked to the end of the street, observing the neighborhood. He noticed a few cars parked unusually and a group of men loitering near a corner store. Their posture and the way they glanced toward Clara's house told him they were keeping watch. Marcus made a mental note, writing down license plate numbers and observing faces. Returning home, Marcus explained to Clara what he had seen. "They are trying to scare you, Mom. They think you are alone. But now they know I'm here, and they will think twice before doing anything." Clara felt a surge of relief. Just knowing Marcus had eyes on the situation made her feel safe again. For the rest of the day, Marcus stayed close to Clara. He helped her repair the garden gate and secured the windows more firmly. Clara worked beside him, moving carefully but happily. The act of fixing something together reminded her of the strength she had always carried. Even in fear, she could take small steps to reclaim her home. That evening, Marcus set up a small camera near the porch, hidden where it could capture anyone approaching the house. He also made a few discreet calls, quietly gathering information about the people who had been harassing Clara. He did not want to alarm her, but he knew preparation was key. Clara watched him work with admiration and trust. He was not just her son, he was a protector, someone who combined love with skill and careful thinking. As night fell, Marcus sat with Clara on the porch. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in orange and purple. Clara held her cup of tea and looked at her son. "I can't thank you enough for being here," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes glistened. "You don't need to thank me, Mom," Marcus replied. "I'm here because I care. And because you've always been my strength, I'll be yours now." Clara smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in days. The fear that had weighed on her seemed lighter with him by her side. Suddenly, Marcus noticed movement across the street. Shadows shifted near the corner where the men had been earlier. He quietly motioned to Clara to go inside and locked the door behind her. He watched carefully, noting every detail. The men were pacing, looking frustrated, unaware that the house was being monitored. Marcus felt satisfaction. The tables were slowly turning. Back inside, Clara tried to distract herself by reading a book. She glanced at the window occasionally, her heart skipping at every sound outside. Marcus appeared at her side, handing her a cup of tea. "Don't worry, Mom. I've got this," he said gently. Clara nodded, sipping slowly, trying to calm her nerves. That night, Clara slept more peacefully than she had in weeks. Marcus stayed in the living room, alert and watchful, but careful not to disturb her rest. For the first time since the threats began, Clara felt a small sense of hope. She knew the road ahead might still be difficult, but having her son there changed everything. Marcus, too, felt a mix of determination and pride. He had faced many challenges in his career, but this one was personal. Protecting his mother was more important than any case or mission. And he knew that soon, he would have the opportunity to confront the people who thought they could scare Clara. For now, Willow Creek was quiet, but the calm was only temporary. Marcus's presence and careful planning were the first steps in ensuring Clara's safety. And somewhere in the shadows, those who had threatened her were unaware that their plans were already being unraveled. The next morning, Marcus woke early. Clara was still asleep, and he quietly moved through the house, checking every door and window. He wanted to make sure nothing had changed overnight. The quiet streets of Willow Creek felt different now. He could sense that the people who had been harassing Clara were growing bolder. Marcus knew he had to act before anything worse happened. After breakfast, Marcus told Clara, "I'm going out to gather some information. Just stay inside, and don't worry. I'll be back soon." Clara nodded, trusting him completely. She knew he would handle the situation carefully, but worry still gnawed at her. She watched him leave, her heart both heavy and hopeful. Marcus moved quietly through the neighborhood, keeping an eye on the streets and houses. He noticed the same group of men from before, lingering near the corner store. They glanced toward Clara's house frequently, and their body language showed impatience and frustration. Marcus wrote notes, memorized faces, and even took a few discreet photos from a distance. He had to be careful. If they noticed him, it could escalate the situation. As he observed, Marcus also talked to a few neighbors quietly. He asked questions without revealing too much, just enough to piece together a better picture of the group and their habits. Everyone seemed reluctant to talk, but Marcus noticed small hints like who avoided looking at Clara's house, or who appeared nervous when she walked by. He felt a growing sense of control. With careful planning, he could prevent any harm. Returning to Clara's house, Marcus began making adjustments to protect her. He reinforced the locks on the doors, added a few extra security measures, and even installed a small camera that could see the driveway and street clearly. Clara watched him work, admiring how calm and confident he appeared. "You're amazing, Marcus," she said softly. I don't know what I would do without you. Marcus smiled gently. You've always been strong, Mom. I'm just helping you now. His words were reassuring, but he also knew that words alone were not enough. The people threatening Clara needed to understand that she was not helpless and that he was ready to take action if necessary. Later that evening, Marcus noticed something unusual. A van parked farther down the street than before, its engine running. Two men were inside, staring toward Clara's house. Marcus felt a surge of tension. They were planning something, and it was time to be ready. He quickly called a colleague from work, giving discreet details about the van and the men. Soon, backup was on the way, though Marcus knew he would handle the situation personally first if needed. Inside, Clara was preparing tea. She looked out the window and saw Marcus walking back and forth on the porch, occasionally glancing toward the street. What are they doing now? She asked, a mix of curiosity and fear in her voice. They're watching, Marcus replied calmly. But that's okay. I know what they're up to, and I'm ready. Clara nodded, feeling her chest fill with a sense of security. The fear that had been constant over the past days was still there, but Marcus's presence made it manageable. As the sun began to set, Marcus called Clara to the living room. Mom, I need you to stay right here and watch the windows. I'm going to create a situation where we can catch them without putting you in danger. Clara nodded, trusting him completely. Outside, the men were becoming more confident, thinking Clara was alone. Marcus moved silently, positioning himself where he could observe and intervene if necessary. He had a plan to gather evidence while also sending a clear message: they could not intimidate his mother. The tension in the air was thick. Clara sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, feeling both fear and anticipation. She knew Marcus had a strategy, but she didn't know the details. Her trust in him was absolute. Finally, Marcus took a decisive step. He activated a hidden camera, recorded the men's actions, and made sure the situation was completely documented. They were about to realize that their plan had failed. Marcus remained calm, focused, and ready for whatever happened next. Clara looked at him with awe. You've turned my fear into hope, she whispered. Marcus gave her a reassuring nod. For the first time since the threats began, Clara felt that they were in control. The people who had tried to scare her were about to learn that she was not alone and that help had already arrived. That night, the air in Willow Creek felt heavier. The small town was quiet, but Clara sensed something different. She sat on the porch, her hands folded in her lap, listening to the soft rustle of leaves. Marcus stayed nearby, keeping watch, his eyes alert to every movement in the street and shadows beyond. Marcus had spent the day reviewing the information he had gathered. The men harassing Clara were part of a group that had intimidated others in town, but they had never expected someone to stand up to them. They didn't know Clara had a son trained to handle dangerous situations, and they certainly didn't know he was an FBI agent. Marcus's plan was simple: protect his mother, gather evidence, and make sure the group understood they could not continue. Around 8 in the evening, the men approached Clara's house. They moved cautiously, unaware that Marcus had anticipated their steps. He stayed hidden, observing, recording, and preparing. Clara watched from behind the curtains, her heart beating fast but trusting Marcus completely. Marcus stepped into view, his voice calm but firm. Stop right there. The men froze, startled. They hadn't expected anyone to confront them directly. Marcus held up his badge. I am an FBI agent. You are under investigation for harassment and intimidation. Any further action will have serious consequences. Clara watched as the men's confident expressions faltered. They realized they had underestimated the situation completely. Marcus continued, these people are not alone, and I will not allow anyone to harm them. You need to leave, now, and never come back. The men hesitated, exchanging glances. Their plan had been to scare Clara, not to confront someone trained and prepared. Slowly, they backed away, muttering apologies and excuses. Marcus's calm but authoritative stance left no room for argument. Within minutes, they retreated to their vehicle and drove off, their arrogance replaced by unease. Clara stepped outside, her hands shaking slightly. "Marcus, you did it," she whispered. Relief and pride mixed in her voice. She could barely believe the danger was over, but she trusted her son had handled everything. Marcus walked to her side, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Mom. You're safe now. I've already documented everything, and the authorities will follow up. They won't bother you again." Clara nodded, tears filling her eyes. She had lived through fear, but now that fear was replaced by safety and gratitude. For the first time in days, Clara felt truly calm. She looked around at her garden, at the porch where she had spent so many quiet evenings, and realized that her home had survived. More importantly, she had survived. Marcus had protected her, yes, but her courage had guided him too. She had faced the fear, stayed calm, and waited for help. That night, Clara and Marcus sat together on the porch, sipping tea and listening to the gentle sounds of Willow Creek. The street was quiet, and the shadows had retreated. Clara felt a deep sense of peace. The ordeal had been frightening, but it had also reminded her of the strength of family and love. Marcus watched his mother closely, making sure she was comfortable. He knew the group might have been gone for now, but he also knew the importance of preparation. "Mom," he said softly, "you showed a lot of strength these past days. I'm proud of you." Clara smiled through her tears. "I'm proud of you too, Marcus. You came just in time. I don't know what I would have done without you." Her voice carried warmth and gratitude, and Marcus felt a swell of emotion. Protecting his mother was more than duty, it was love. As the night deepened, Clara realized that the fear that had once gripped her life no longer had power over her. She had faced threats, endured sleepless nights, and worried constantly, but now she could breathe again. Her home, her garden, and her life were hers to enjoy. And with Marcus by her side, she knew nothing could take that away. Somewhere beyond the streetlights, the men would remember this night for a long time. They had tried to intimidate an elderly woman, not realizing that courage and skill often come in unexpected forms. Clara had been strong enough to endure, and Marcus had been strong enough to act. Together, they had turned fear into victory. As Clara and Marcus sat quietly, watching the moon rise over Willow Creek, the warmth of safety filled the air. The past few days had been challenging, but they had also proven the power of family, courage, and trust. Clara smiled at her son, knowing that with him by her side, she would always be protected not just by his training, but by his love. The morning after the confrontation, Clara woke feeling lighter than she had in days. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting warm patterns on the wooden floor. For the first time in a long while, she felt safe in her own home. She stretched slowly and looked around, noticing the garden, her flowers, and the porch. Everything that had been threatened just days ago now felt alive and full of hope again. Marcus was already in the kitchen, making breakfast. He turned with a smile as she entered. "Good morning, Mom. Sleep well?" Clara nodded. "I did, thanks to you. I feel peaceful today." Marcus set a plate of pancakes in front of her. "You earned that peace, Mom. You stayed strong while I handled the danger. I'm proud of you." Clara's heart swelled. It had been frightening, but the experience had also shown her the strength she carried inside. Even in fear, she had been brave. And now, with Marcus beside her, the world felt safe again. After breakfast, Clara stepped outside to inspect her garden. The rose bushes had survived, and the sunlight highlighted the vibrant colors of her flowers. It was a small moment, but it felt like a victory. Clara touched the petals gently, smiling. Life had returned to normal, but she knew she would never take it for granted again. Soon, neighbors began to come by. Mrs. Patel was the first, bringing a basket of fresh bread. "Clara, we're so glad you're safe," she said warmly. "Everyone in the neighborhood is talking about how brave you've been." Clara felt a lump in her throat. "I didn't do much," she replied softly. "Marcus protected me." Mrs. Patel shook her head. "You did more than you know. You stayed calm and strong. That courage made all the difference. And having Marcus here was wonderful too." Throughout the day, more neighbors came to check on Clara. Some offered flowers, others simply shared kind words. Clara realized how much love and support existed in her community, even in a town where fear had started to grow. She felt grateful for the small acts of kindness that reminded her she was never truly alone. Marcus spent the day filing reports and sharing the evidence he had gathered with his colleagues. Clara stayed nearby, watching him work. She noticed how focused he was, how careful he remained, and how much he cared not just professionally, but personally. Marcus was not just an agent, he was a son devoted to his mother's safety. As evening approached, Clara and Marcus sat together on the porch again. The sky was painted in soft shades of orange and pink, the air warm and calm. Clara took a deep breath, savoring the quiet. "I can't believe how quickly everything changed," she said softly. "I went from feeling afraid in my own home to feeling safe and supported. It's incredible." Marcus nodded, placing a hand over hers. "That's what family is for, Mom. You've always been my strength, and now it's my turn to protect you. But the most important part is that you never gave up, even when things felt scary." Clara smiled, feeling tears of relief and joy welling in her eyes. "I suppose we make a good team, don't we?" Marcus chuckled softly. "The best team," he said. As the sun set, Clara felt a renewed sense of hope. She knew there might still be challenges in life, but she also knew she had the courage and support to face them. Her home was safe, her garden bloomed, and her community had shown its kindness. Most importantly, she had her son, whose love and protection had been unwavering. The town of Willow Creek slowly returned to its normal rhythm. People who had once whispered and watched cautiously now smiled at Clara again, offering small gestures of friendship. The men who had tried to intimidate her were gone, their plans undone by courage, strategy, and care. Clara had learned that fear could be faced, that threats could be overcome, and that love and family were stronger than any intimidation. That night, Clara and Marcus sat quietly on the porch, sipping tea and listening to the soft sounds of the neighborhood. Clara's heart was full. She looked at her son and said, "Thank you for being here, Marcus. You didn't just protect me, you reminded me of hope." Marcus smiled. "We protect each other, Mom. That's what family is for." Under the stars, Clara felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. The challenges she had faced only strengthened her spirit. With love, courage, and support, she realized that no threat could ever truly take away her sense of safety and belonging. Willow Creek was home, and she was ready to embrace life again, confident, resilient, and full of hope for the days ahead. And as she closed her eyes that night, Clara knew one simple truth: together, she and Marcus could face anything, and love would always prevail.